Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you today. I think can you hear me all right? I want to welcome you all to this afternoon's webinar it's an online workshop that we do for mental health and well-being, which is part of a bigger project, which I'll describe in a minute. Just checking, can you all hear me all right? Okay, brilliant. Right, hello, I'm Jamie Sheridan, and I'm talking today with my colleague Tracey Cole, who's a therapist and NLP practitioner. Tracey talk a bit about, talk a lot about what she's talking about later. Today's talk is on mental health and well-being. We're part of a project called the Digital Innovation Education Hub, which is running in Stoke it's funded by the UK government, and we're part of the consortium, which is Digital Innovation Education. And we have, we have these partners. So we have Wavemaker, who organise it, CIC based in Stoke, run by UK government, run for UK government Stoke Council by Wavemaker, linking with Staffs University. My Health Kit is a business set up by Dr. Ruth Chambers, who some of you might know, looking at health products really to support health and well-being. Framescape is a digital services company, and my business, which is Tracey Line. And I got involved partly because Ruth Chambers asked me about this time last year. We set up the project and to come on board to do healthy aging. And this gentleman here is my grandfather. He was 105, passed away in October 2020. He'd had a very much a life well lived. And I suppose I wanted to be like him. I just turned 51, so feeling a bit old myself. But you know, I've got this man to live up to. He's a life very well lived. Very active, very happy until he had about 102, and then lived for 3 years on his own in a care home, very well looked after, very stimulated, very alive and active. And that led me to a book called The 100-Year Life. And The 100-Year Life is actually written by two economists, they're professors, Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott, and they have come up with an idea, way of living life. As economists, they're looking more for retirement, how we live. People live more to be 100 or towards to be 100, and probably if someone's going to retire at 60, 65, they've still got another 35, 40 years to live. So there's a whole piece around the living, about living and being able to afford to live. Then there's proactive health and being fitter, healthier, thinking more about what you're doing. So we've been involved in developing two projects. One's Life Liberated, and the other's the Aging Curve. The Aging Curve is sort of proactive healthcare. So the Aging Curve is community-based social impact, which this project comes under, and it's sort of functional decline. As we get a bit older, we slow down a bit more, and how you can prevent the aging curve, sort of just to be healthier, more mental well-being, just be a bit better in yourself. On the other side is called Life Liberated, which is the idea, it's almost a private retail, it's healthy aging superstore. If we can bring various ideas together, it's very innovative. A lot of pressures on the NHS coming up, particularly post-COVID, and we're looking for perhaps a bit of a different way to move forward. And this is the delivery team. Tracey's down there on the left with a very nice horse. I'm sure she'll tell me a bit more about that in a bit. Gareth is a podiatrist, talk about diabetic foot. Lynn on the top right is occupational therapist, also another NLP practitioner. Owen in the middle is a fitness coach, talks about physical health and wellbeing, and Rod's our marketing guy. And why promote healthy aging? Basically, it's again the 100-year life. This is based on aging is valuable. So healthy behaviours can prevent chronic conditions and slow down functional decline. So a lot of stresses in life, retirement, bereavement, disease, which happen during life course events. And as we get a bit older, particularly myself at 50, it's there's things happen. You get a bit of wisdom, you get a few knocks, and you keep moving forward. Then there's the resilience enhancing factors, exercise, social networks, economic security, all these which make you a bit stronger. So I suppose it's taking a bit of control of it for ourselves. Aging curve, the idea is we looked as we developed the concept into body and heart. So I could talk about musculoskeletal, biomechanics, strength and conditioning, exercise, and then the mind and soul, so the connectivity and the mental stimulation, which just makes you feel better and perhaps a bit more ready to cope, which is what Tracey's going to be talking about. So for the future, you hopefully be able at some stage go into a life liberated store, and the scanners, there's a bit of Star Trek stuff going on in terms of age technologies, but actually that's for the future. So today I'm going to pass you to Tracey Cole, and she'll tell you about herself. And thanks very much for joining us. And if you've got any questions, then please put them in the chat, and we've got plenty of time at the end for a conversation. Okay, Tracey, I'm stopping sharing, so that's then, can you do it?
Okay, I'll just share my screen. There we go. Okay, thanks, Jamie. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health and well-being, as you know. I'm going to start with just reflecting on how we live at the moment. We very much have a 24/7 mentality. Most people are attached to some kind of device or phone. And it's that connectivity that is probably our downfall. This is rewiring how we think, how we act, how we behave, and so on. And it's definitely a stressor at the moment. Being hyper connected, more connected to other people, and many more people than we ever have been, really is taking a toll. People are expecting instant replies to messages. People expect instant reactions and actions and so on, and it's that is calling into question how we live. So we don't always think about our minds as much as we do about our bodies. We often neglect our mental health, and to some extent, living in this busy world, no matter which age of life you're going through, we've forgotten and long left behind how to connect to our minds. So what I want to do, first of all, is just a quick little exercise with you to show you that you can be very much in touch with your own mind. So all you need to do is to just put your hands together and put your index fingers out parallel. Now you can just rest on the desk. I'm just lifting my hands up so you can see what I'm doing. And looking at your fingers, I want you to imagine that there's a little vice around those two fingers. Just a little gentle vice. And that little vice is just turning inwards. You can imagine it just screwing it inwards, bringing those fingers together. And just imagine it. Just imagine little vice tightening up, tighter, 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 tighter. Imagine now that vice getting a little bit stronger, a little bit tighter, winding it in, screwing that vice inwards, ever inwards, more and more and more and more. And just keep going, keep tightening the vice, and keep going. Now, my fingers have touched, yours may have stayed in the same position. They may have moved in a little bit. And I'm sure that you didn't move them on purpose, and that they moved almost under their own control. And it's the simple suggestion, you can relax your hands now. It's the simple suggestion that you've got this imaginary vice and then it's bringing your fingers together. And so there's part of our deeper mind, our unconscious or subconscious mind, that's responding to that suggestion. And that shows you, if your fingers did move even a touch, that you still have a really nice connection with that part of your mind. And if your fingers stayed rigidly the same, as long as you weren't rigidly holding them on purpose, then it shows that maybe there's a little bit of work to be done. So where are our mental health challenges right now? So one of the big things in mental health right now is burnout. Burnout is throughout, as I say, the age ranges. It was originally thought to have come and been coined in the 1970s in health workers. Health workers were extremely hardworking. They were seeing all kinds of ailments, injuries, you name it. And this was causing a great deal of stress and anxiety that was very prolonged, and it led to them being exhausted. Fast forward a little bit, and the term burnout got expanded to other people in the workforce, people again who were absolutely exhausted. And now it's spreading to people outside of the workforce as well. So it's across the board, people in work, out of work, everybody is subject to it. So we can see on the screen that in a US survey, they used a cross section of ages, and 43% identified with having burnout. So almost half of them. But that was before COVID and lockdowns, and now it's just over half. So half the people on the survey would say that they are burnt out, which is an amazing percentage. If we look at the age ranges, then the baby boomers, kind of pre-1964-ish kind of births, then there's about a third of them, about 31%. And 54% of the Gen Xers, so a little bit later, post 1964, and over half of them are currently said by their own admission to be burnt out. So it's a massive challenge at the moment. So we could do with knowing what it is and how to get rid of it and how to steer clear of it. So what is it? Well, it's a physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. It really does have a massive emotional side to it, but you are physically unable to do very much, mentally completely exhausted. And as I mentioned before, it may be triggered by work, but it has many triggers. It can be home life, it can be a change of life. So burnout occurs when you've had a period of prolonged excessive stress, and there could be depression in there or anxiety in there, but it's been for a long while and there's not really any let up. So you've been through this exhausted state for a long time. But it's not stress. It's very different from stress, as we'll see in a moment. It's not anxiety and it's not depression, although people who are burnt out may feel these as well. So depression, anxiety, and stress have very high levels of the stress hormone. But in burnout, it's almost like you've been through these and you've come out the other side and you've completely depleted your stress hormone levels. So you find that it's very, very low in these people. If somebody has stress, for whatever reason that stress might be, if you take them out of the situation the cortisol will return back to normal levels. So if they go on holiday, after maybe a few days or even a week, starting to feel very different, the cortisol level starts to decrease and they can relax. But in burnout, what happens is that you might remove yourself from the unhelpful environment, but your cortisol level stays very low, and actually your mood doesn't really change. So you don't feel that you're getting out of burnout if you go on holiday, for instance. You still feel exactly the same. So in burnout, every day is a bad day. You can't get rid of burnout on a single day. It's unlike a lot of the other mental health issues like the stress, depression, and anxiety, where there is a chance that a person might be able to move themselves out of it in a different environment, in a different situation, having rest and so on. But in burnout, that doesn't happen. So people in burnout find it very difficult to care about things. They find it very difficult to care about people or work or home life. And that just further makes them feel even more guilty and also saps them of even more energy. They really are exhausted emotionally, mentally, physically. And in burnout, nothing captures your interest anymore. So you find everything totally mind-numbing and dull and boring, and it's not worth your effort. Or the opposite, you find it so overwhelming that you can't even begin to think about it. So it's a very stuck state to be in, very static state. And because of that, it's quite challenging to get out of it. So you might feel that nothing that you do ever makes a difference or is particularly appreciated. So I've put on the screen a few of the symptoms of burnout, but obviously there's lots of crossover with anxiety, depression, stress, and lots of other conditions as well. But people in burnout very often have a number of these. So there's aches and pains that they might not know where they stem from. Headaches might be occurring. Definitely sleep disturbance, that's quite common. Irritability, inability to rest or relax, even when they have gone for a day out or they're in a nice, relaxing environment, they've gone on holiday. It doesn't matter, they're still feeling the symptoms of burnout. There's an inability to balance their life because everything is hard work. So they're often frustrated. This disengaged is really important. There is a total disengagement, total disinterest in what's going on, and a certain amount of emptiness as well. So just a very quick glance at some of the comparisons of stress versus burnout. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, but stress, as we can see, is over-engagement. You are bombarded by things to do, jobs to do, people on your back, whereas burnout, you've gone exactly the opposite way. People may be bombarding you, but it's almost like you can't hear them and you have little care. In stress, the emotions are overreactive, whereas in burnout, they're blunted. Everything is now becoming very, very down-regulated in burnout. And we can see there's loss of energy, loss of motivation in burnout. Stress might lead to anxiety, whereas burnout tends to lead to a detachment and a depression. Okay. So how on earth do we turn things around when people are in this low energy state? So it's important to recognize the signs in yourself and in others. And then that awareness is getting us part of the way out of it. The first thing to do is obviously to reach out to someone and tell them about it and tell them how you feel about it. Limit contact with the energy vampires in your life, the people who really do suck out the energy from you. Setting boundaries, I know that's easier said than done, but occasionally saying no to things in a very polite way, because if you are in burnout or you are edging towards it, then you won't get out of that situation by taking on more and more. So it's a protective way of thinking about things here. We have to protect ourselves when we're in burnout, or others who might be in burnout, who are our colleagues or our friends or family. Another thing is that if the person is into social media or watches a lot on their screen, social media, as we know, can be used for fabulous purposes as well as the more negative purposes. So it's taking a break from it because we don't want to see necessarily the more negative side of it. But also the blue light. Blue light exposure, we probably know that you can have special filters on your devices. A lot of them have inbuilt blue light filters that you can switch on, because blue light really does disrupt our brains in terms of the sleep and the wake cycles. And we'll talk a little bit about sleep in a moment, and we'll see just how vital it is, especially for people in burnout. These specs that I've got on at the moment are blue light specs. They're not prescription in any way, and they're just cutting out. They're not perfect, just like the screens aren't perfect, but they're cutting out some of that blue light. Blue light affects your hormones, affects the brain's ability to adapt to different situations and to be happy to adapt to different situations. So we can understand that somebody who was in burnout and has lost the ability to care about these things isn't going to adapt very well. You may want to nurture a creative side. This has been shown in brain scans to really affect how we live our lives and how positive we can be. So it may be a bit of art or a bit of knitting or sewing. It doesn't really matter what it is. If that's something that you enjoy, then that's a brilliant way to start to turn things around. And it would feel like a huge effort to somebody in burnout, but just the starting of it, and even just a few moments a day, 10, 20 minutes, will start to turn things around. Massive priority on sleep, as we'll see in just a second, exercise and healthy eating. So I'm going to just mention those three things because although they seem very little things and they seem like things that are obvious and the things that we're always told to do, and it's things that we are expected to know about for a healthy lifestyle, it's always good to look at it from the mental health aspect as well. And cut down on your caffeine and alcohol. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. It's just a nice reminder that these small changes put together can make a big change and can definitely help people to move themselves away from burnout and all the other conditions that we've mentioned, like the anxiety, depression, and stress. So I want to talk a little bit about sleep, because sleep is a really interesting phase of our day. And when we sleep, the fluid that surrounds the brain rinses our brain. It's literally a brain wash, which I think is quite nice. So our brains get washed overnight when we sleep, And this removes certain chemicals, metabolic waste, toxic products and so on. And so it's extremely good for the brain to function properly. One of the waste products that's been identified is a protein that is found in large amounts in people with dementia. So we can see that it is absolutely vital to get the correct amount of sleep. And during those deeper stages, as you probably know, brain cell activity starts to slow down, heart rate and blood flow also slow down. And the great thing about this is that these taken together seem to be aiding memory. And so it's another way that when Jamie was talking about living to 100 and beyond and living in a healthy way, that memory doesn't have to deteriorate with age. So it can allow the brain then to also recover from what's gone on in the day, to make sense of it, to put it into perspective and so on. So sleep from a mental health point of view, not merely that you're less irritable, less frustrated and so on, but there's actually physical things that are going on inside your brain during sleep. We can see it's these things that will really help us to move away from burnout. So nutrition, we all know what we should eat. I'm just going to say it from the mental health point of view about sugar. So sugar is not great for the brain, certainly not the refined sugar that we consume far too much of. So we know that in the body, those spikes in sugar levels in the glucose can make you feel good while the spike's nice and high, and then bring you down when the spike's a little bit lower. So it's not great to have this fluctuation in the body. It wears the body down. It causes havoc with insulin and so on. But in the brain, it's interesting that this study, and it was multinational, so lots of different cultures there, different places. They found that sugar was a major factor in higher rates of depression. And in another study, they took youngsters and adults of all different ages, and they looked at the correlation between eating fast food, processed food, and the number of people with depression. And so they found this link between people who were eating the highly processed food, not just as a treat. We don't want to be killjoys, but eating it constantly, eating it daily and several times a day, that this was strongly linked to increased rates of depression. And exercise, again, from the brain's perspective, we know that we're getting more oxygen to the body, which includes the brain, but that is able to dampen or slightly depress that anxiety, that fight, flight or freeze response that we see in a lot of these mental health issues. So we were always programmed as cavemen to have a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress, because we would need it. We needed to get ourselves out of danger. And in those days when we were hunter-gatherers, we needed to be on the ball when life-threatening episodes were about to unfold. So having that short spell of stress, is exactly what we were programmed for. The problem is in modern day that we're getting that stress and that anxiety as a constant, rather than just a little pocket while we go and grab our bear or our saber-toothed tiger or whatever it might be, we're seeing it daily and it's stretching out and it doesn't have necessarily a reason behind it. And so being able to take a little bit of exercise helps to just depress that a little bit. But exercise is also fabulous if you're trying to do anything to do with new habits, or you're trying to learn something, because it creates these new neural pathways, so new nervous pathways in the brain and the nervous system. So it's a wonderful way to expand your thinking, change your thinking. Exercise, as we also know, elevates some fantastic chemicals in the brain, like serotonin that makes you feel good, and dopamine that gives you rewards, makes you feel like you've earned something, and endorphins, which is the feel-good factor afterwards, the relaxation and sometimes pain relief. Sometimes people who are in burnout are in denial, and they try to power through and push on through. So we need something where we can get people out of burnout, or get ourselves out of burnout, that's quite easy to do. And we hear a lot about self-care these days. And sometimes people mix up treats with self-care, because we do need something that's daily. And a treat may not be necessarily something that you do all the time. It might be just a special one-off, or something you do when you're feeling tired, or something you do at weekend. But we need something if we're in burnout. And the same goes for stress and anxiety and depression too. Something you can do every single day, something easy. We need to recognize the signs, reset ourselves, and recover. We mentioned establishing boundaries before, being able to say no when we really don't have the time or energy to do something. And we've mentioned the sleep, nutrition, exercise. Declutter is another one. There's increasing amounts of research going into the benefits of decluttering, even just cleaning out a cupboard or a drawer. Now, I know if you're in full burnout, this is going to be difficult for you. So we need, again, to just have something that is a little bit easier. So I'm going to bring us on to that in just a moment. I would like to just mention this book, The Burnout Solution by Siobhan Murray. It's a super book. It's a really nice, easy read. Siobhan Murray writes it from the perspective of being a single mum. She had a full-time job that was extremely time-consuming. She had various jobs in marketing, also as a psychotherapist. She also had two young boys, and she had to look after her mum, who lived in a different house on a different street. So she had lots and lots going on in her life. So she's not writing it from the point of view that she's a single lady with no other responsibilities apart from herself. There was a lot going on, and she burnt out several times in her life. And so she wrote this burnout solution, which is super, I think, for anyone that's going through burnout, but also anxiety, stress, and depression too, because she talks from the heart, and it's just written in a very nice, chatty, easy style. So we have this need to do something daily, this self-care, this self-kindness, if you like, to be absolutely committed to putting our health first. So let me just explain a couple of things that might come into mind, but might also not be the thing that we need to do. We might have parts of the day that you or others decide are relaxing. but they may not be. They may just be that we've conditioned to think about that. So going to the gym or going out or having certain routines, like meeting friends or getting up early to write a diary or a journal, all these things that social media suggest are really, really good for us and will really help us in our mental health, they may not be especially good for us. And that's because they've become a bit of a chore. So if you like doing any of these things, then that's wonderful, keep doing them. But if they feel like a chore and you're sort of doing them because you think it's going to be good for you, you can keep doing them when you're not in a burnout situation. Obviously, going to the gym is wonderful. Seeing other people is great. But if you are in burnout and this kind of thing just exhausts you even further, then that isn't something that you want to be doing. You might want to consider, before I give you my example of what you could do, whether you're an introvert or extrovert. In psychology, these mean slightly different to the generalized meaning of the word. So an introvert or extrovert is how you relax. An introvert relaxes by being on their own or maybe with a significant other, whereas an extrovert leads people. So you need to think, if you're in burnout or you're helping someone with burnout, is that person or are you an introvert? So do you find it more relaxing to be on your own, or maybe just one other person there, or a very, very small, tight-knit amount of people? Or is that person naturally an extrovert and enjoys going out and enjoys being in the thick of it with a crowd? Because some of these won't meet those criteria. And that's maybe why they're starting to feel like hard work and something you should do, not something that you enjoy. So this is from Siobhan Murray's book, and I really love this little solution because it's so simple. And that having to do something every day, we do need to keep it nice and simple. So this is one example. Siobhan tells us about walking, but it's a special kind of walking. It's a 20-minute walk. So it's 10 minutes from your front door and then 10 minutes home. It can be longer, but again, we're trying to cut down on it feeling like a chore. We're trying to make it really easy. And this 20-minute timescale has been found to be just right to be able to bring about changes. So it's 20-minute walk in total, 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back. And it's a style of mindful walking. Now, what she tells us to do, and the reason I've got this funny little chap here, is to imagine that there's a purple alien who lives in the clouds. And the purple alien is absolutely fascinated by life on this planet, but has to live in the clouds and can't come down and experience it. So we have to chat to the purple alien and tell him everything that we see, hear, feel as we do our walk. So it becomes a running commentary. So it's utter rubbish. It's just commentating inside your own head, you'd be glad to know, not out loud, on everything that you may see or hear or feel. So it's literally saying, well, there's a crack in the pavement, and oh, look, there's a dandelion growing through the crack, and there's 2 buds on the dandelion, and maybe they'll bloom tomorrow, and there's 6 leaves on there, and I'll keep walking, and there's a hedge, and there's a bit more pavement, and there's a crack curb here, and there's a grid here. And it is literally talking this absolute trivia and rubbish. And what that does is just kind of jams the signal for you to get in there with any kind of anxious, stressful, or depressive thoughts, because you're so busy talking about all the rubbish that you can see anything that you hear and anything that you feel, your mind is kept busy. And in just those 20 minutes, whilst you're giving yourself this commentary, that's enough for the brain to kind of rest and understand that there's a different way of being, healthier way of being, and it just aids the recovery. So if you keep a diary or you have a calendar, it's good to make sure that it's in there every day. It doesn't have to be the same time every day, because that would make it a chore, and we're desperately trying to avoid chores. But we're having it so that it's in there sometime in the day, on a flexible schedule, but it's something that we are doing. And I've tried this myself, and I really did like it when I was doing it. And it really does shut out those thoughts that pop into your head that perhaps are unhelpful and unbeneficial. And it is quite good fun. And to be honest, you also notice an awful lot more on your walk than perhaps you would if you were thinking about things and to-do lists and all the other things that were around in our brains. So it's one example of things that we can do. It's a very active thing to do. So it brings in our exercise as well. Obviously, for people who perhaps can't do the walking, walking is a little bit difficult for them, then 20 minutes of something similar would be absolutely fine. So you could be sitting down doing your sketching or knitting or sewing, or even just doing one of these colouring in exercises where you're just randomly colouring in lovely patterns, these books that you can buy. And you are doing the same thing just for 20 minutes. You are just saying what you can see. Can be in great detail. It's just to, as I say, jam the signal. What you're hearing, what you're feeling. And even there was a point in lockdown when I heard of people walking around the house. I'm not suggesting that you should walk around your house for 20 minutes, but I know of people that did. And it sounds like it's not going to be that beneficial, 20 minutes in the whole of a day, but it is. It's really beneficial. So I'm going to open the chat up to questions. I can see there's been some chat. Let me just see.
Thank you very much, Tracey. I'm going to stop the recording now so we can just have a chat